Hello everyone, welcome back. In this video, we will deep dive into Python keywords and identifiers. These are two fundamental concepts that you must understand before writing any Python program. Before we delve further, just to show you some live code, we might be changing across multiple screens, and sometimes it is taking more than usual, and I do not have bandwidth to kind of edit this video. So please bear with me if it takes some time while switching across the interface. We will try and find some solution for it in uh, upcoming videos. So with that, let us start with Python keywords and identifiers. In this video, if time permits, we plan to cover another minor topic that is primarily about how you can declare and use variables, and how you can actually have non-executable code in Python that we call comments, and broad uh, coverage on data types supported by Python. But that we will do if a video length is not going much beyond say 35 to 40 minutes. Otherwise, we might stop in between and cover them in subsequent videos. Uh, so, Python keywords, and if you want to look at uh, exhaustive list, right? That is supported by this particular language. On your terminal, you can type help and in bracket keywords, as you might see on the right hand side. We will also execute this in our Jupyter notebook, and we'll have another look at it. Some of the typical keywords as you see are if, else, while, for, you know def for definition or the start of a function. So that way you have probably 30 or 30 plus different keywords. Why we are covering about it? We are covering about it because um, your program will have several lines, and those lines will have a group of characters that you can call token. Um, so those group of characters cannot be one of these that you are seeing on your screen. These are reserved, right? So if you try and have the same thing for some other purpose, uh, it will actually result into error, and you have to accordingly modify your program. Just to make you a little comfortable, if you go about this list, right? Um, so you on the right hand side black screen, you can start looking from false, right? So false, true are actually you know boolean values that corresponds to 0 and 1, and you can't have false and true with this particular um, uh, word combination. None, which is actually kind of null, typically in other languages. And then you can see some of those related with and, as, assert, async, await, right? So this list actually, while writing your program, will not be allowed. And once you start writing, couple of programs will actually get familiar with it. Because these will be the set of tokens supported by language for a specific purposes, and they will not be allowed by system to use in other context. Now, when we talk about identifiers, right? So typically, the group of tokens that we are going to talk about, that can be called variables, right? Functions or other objects in Python, right? And collectively, combination of these are known as identifiers. Now, what all could be valid identifier? So if you see, uh, rules for valid identifiers are listed here, right? The name should begin with an uppercase or a lowercase alphabet or an underscore sign. So these are the only three possibilities. It could be, an alphabet, either uppercase or lowercase, or it could be underscore sign. And from there on, this can be followed by any combination of lowercase or uppercase alphabet, uh, number 0 to 9, or any number of underscore, right? So, for example, what you keep in mind is your identifier cannot start with a digit, right? So you can't have something starting with one or something else. The second thing is there is no limitation on length of any of these identifiers, right? It could be of any length, but to keep it meaningful, you have to actually prefer certain meaningful lengths, right? So language doesn't put any constraint. The only constant that we have seen so far is it must start from an alphabet, either uppercase or lowercase, or an underscore sign. And from there on, you can have any combination of alphabet, numerics, or underscore, or you can say one or more. Just in previous slide, right? We looked at keywords. So keywords or reserved words are not permitted. Uh, Uh, so exactly the same keyword, right? So it can be that your actually keyword could be a sub token, right? For example, if capital F A L S E false, if that is actually a keyword that is used, then you can have use something with say a small f, right? False, or say false. Um, could be part of your another bigger name, right? So that way. And another thing is you can't use special symbols, right? So some of the ones that are listed are exclamation mark, at the rate of, right, dollar percent, etc. This might be, you might be tested in your exam that what are actually valid identifiers, variables, or whatever it is. And I think the way to remember it is if it is not starting with an alphabet or an underscore, uh, it is not valid combination. And the second thing that you have to keep in mind is this shouldn't be made up exactly of some reserved word or keywords, and this shouldn't contain a special symbol. So with that in mind, say example of what you are seeing, my underscore variable, right? Why? Because it is starting with an alphabet, it is having one or more underscore, and then having bunch of alphabets. Your temp, temperature, right? That's perfectly fine. Underscore, yes, that is perfectly fine because underscore is permitted. Uh, on the invalid one, as you say, right, one name, right? One name is not allowed at the rate of variable because it contains, why? Because it contains special characters. True, because true is a keyword, right? So this is how the set of patterns that you have to keep in mind. Uh, so, yeah, just from exam perspective, uh, the questions that could be asked, what are keywords and identifiers in Python? Provide examples. Uh, and as you know, that keywords are reserved words in Python that can't be used as identifiers. And identifiers are names given to variables and function, and they must follow a specific rule as we just discussed. You can have some practice question here, right? So, for example, list some certain set of keywords and explain their purpose, or identify errors in following identifiers, right? One name. So, if you are looking at um, identifiers, so this one, right? Why this is not allowed? Because this is having um, this is starting with one, right? And why my and a name, my hyphen name is not permissible? Because this is starting with uh, this is having one of the not allowed a special character, that is hyphen. And why true? Not allowed because it is one of the reserved keyword, right? Okay. So here, let us just execute some of this um, in our um, uh, okay. Just give me a second. I'm just trying to remove this eraser. So we'll actually just look at one of the Jupyter notebook, right? And we'll simply try and practice couple of things that we just saw. As I said, sometimes it is taking time switching to that network, so please bear with me. Okay, so here we are. Uh, Let us get there. So, sorry about it. It is taking little more than what we are expecting it to. We'll try fixing it before our. Okay, here we are. So um, just let me check if it is, yeah. So it is being shown there. So in your so this we are doing in a Jupyter notebook, and whatever installation that you might have done through your either Anaconda or other package, each of those will be having interfaces for some of the one of the IDs, and Jupyter will typically be available. So just like if you want to find out, right, what are the keywords, right, that are not available, you can simply enter here and then do shift enter, right? So this is the same list that we were just looking at it some time back. Now if you see variable name, right, uh, and say if you want to assign it any kind of value, right, So is some string, or say name of a student, right? So these are kind of allowable, right? Or you can say x is 10, right? And you can try and print the value of it, right? So those are allowable. But the moment you have say one, if you have something like say first x, right? And if you want to declare like this and say that it should be x, right? So system will not allow it. What you have to do for this, you can have something like, as long as you start with this, right? Similarly, if you will have some special character, for example this one, right? So if you are having number divisible by 2, right? uh, so this one, we are just keeping it short to see where the problem is, right? So this will not be allowed, right? uh, the reason is this hyphen between number and division. So what we have done here, we have looked at reserved keyword, we have looked at what is called variable, right? We have looked at simple variable name. If you are looking for name of function, right? So it will start with def, right? And say if you want to write a function even or odd, right? And say you are having certain number. So this is the syntax, you can how you can define it, right? Definition, then actually an identifier, and if you need to pass any number out there, right? If it is even, what you need to have, you need to have if your number, right, is divisible by 2 or not, right? So if this is 0, then you know that your number is even, right? uh, Otherwise you can say that my number is odd, and just to test it, you can say, uh, you know x is equal to 11, and then even or odd called with x, right? And you do shift enter. So you see the odd that is kind of printed here, right? Not sure if it is visible to you. uh, so here at the bottom of it, right? Okay, so in this lecture so far we have looked at um, keywords and identifier. We will actually move now back to our slide, and we will be looking at comments and variable, and then we'll try and see if we can include data types in this or not. Yeah, so okay. So in just concluded video, you learned about Python keywords and identifiers. Keep practicing, and in next part of this video we will explore variable and comments. So here we will be having, in this video we'll explore Python variables, right? How to assign them values, and how to use comments in your codes, right? So simply speaking, in Python, a variable is a name that refers to a memory location where data is stored. So in other part of the uh, computer science syllabus, you would have seen random access memories and how a particular OS works around that when a program is in execution. So this memory location here is referring to a specific slot in that random access memory, right? Another important part and kind of very distinctive with Python, particularly if some of you have used language like Java or C or C++, is you don't have to declare the type of the variable, right? So Python will automatically figure that out. As you can see, right, you can declare a variable simply like x is equal to 10, right? On the other hand side, comments, if you see, right, so comments in Python starts with a, if it is a single line comment, you simply put has, right, before that sentence starts. So that's how you can see, this is a comment part, right? So if you see, um, this is a comment part, right? So this is a single line comment where this hash is actually in beginning, right? But it can be put other than in beginning as well. So in this case, x is equal to 10 is a logic variable, and what is part of the comment is this is an inline comment, right? Uh, all of these you can put in the triple quote, right? We'll actually, when we go in next section for some of our other work, right? We'll show you how you can put triple quote in begin and then multi-line comment and then end it with a matching code. Okay. So yeah, to declare, say for example, name is John or age is 16, right? So you have a variable name, which is like an identifier that we saw, and that you can have right kind of values, right? And as you say, you don't need to tell that your name is a string or your age is integer, right? Python will automatically guess that for you. From exam perspective, you can expect, define what is variable and comment, explain with example. Say write a Python program to declare, say variable like name, age, and grade, and print their value with comments. But differentiate between single and multi-line comments. So typically, you can expect question or similar line from these topics. Um, so far we have covered keyword and identifiers. Now you know how to work with variables and comments in Python. Practicing, makes you perfect. So do practice, write actually variables. Try and practice with mix of comments. In next part of this video, we will be covering about Python data types, right? And in this part of the video, we'll see actually what are data types in Python. Typically speaking, data types in Python refer to the kind of value that a variable can hold, right? So Python has several built-in data types, and understanding them is key to writing effective Python programs. So let us explore uh, the supported data types in Python. So as you can see in this hierarchical diagram, right? So numbers, right, are one of the major data types. And what are the typical subcategories under numbers? Integer, floating point, boolean. These three are used quite frequently, complex, when you are actually dealing with some math related concept. Then another major type is sequences. Right? So sequences are uh, three major categories: string, list, and tuples. We'll see what exactly they are, and then uh, you know in mapping part, right? So dictionary is well known, which are actually key value pairs. And those of you who are coming from other languages, you might be knowing them by name map in Java. In C, those will be typically be hash. Uh, they are again in C++ with name map. Now, when dictionary only contains, uh, key and no values, then we call that set, right? None is also a kind of data type. We'll actually, look at these in subsequent slides. So just looking at your numeric data type, int is etc. So they will be known by type or class, right? And we'll see how you can look at type of an individual variable, right? Uh, which is just by using the keyword type. So int is actually for integer numbers, right? And it could be positive, negative, zero, as you can see in your tabular example, -12, -3, 0, anything. Float is about real or floating point number. So with decimal 2.04, 4.0, and those kind of things. And complex, when you are having an imaginary part to it that is represented through j. So not I but j. Right? So 3 plus 4j, 2 minus 2j. That's another component which is imaginary. So just to recap, integer used to represent integers, as you see, for example, x equal to 5. Float represents decimal numbers, for example, y is equal to 3.14. Boolean is having true value, capital T RU true, capital F ALSE false, and you can check whether each student, if you assign each student is true, you can check with an equality statement whether it is true or not. In sequences, we are talking about an ordered collection of items, right? What does that mean is your data set is available in increasing or decreasing sequence when you talk from a given direction. So left to right increasing, right to left decreasing. Typically, we are talking about left to right. So strings, are nothing but group of characters, right? And very similar to a string, is a list. So string typically you are having alphabets, right? List is something that can hold different kind of mixed or even mixed console. Python is kind of quite peculiar that it allows you heterogeneous kind of data sets. So list will be something that you will be storing in a particular format, and again you can access them by index. We'll see a specific example of it, right? So if this string you have some simply name is equal to John, you can actually look at its type. If you look at list, say numbers are 1 2 3, but you can even have 4.0, right? In that case it will be a kind of heterogeneous list. Tuple, tuple is another thing when we are going to call it introduce also mutable versus immutable in one of the next few slides. But tuples are known to be mutable, immutable. What does that mean? Once actually you have assigned, and once you have declared an assign, you can't change it. If you change, what happens is it creates another copy of it, and you'll see how they are different than each others. So if we simply say coordinates in a bracket 1 2. Now here it is important for us to look at some of the peculiar uh, So if you see this John, right, you can have either under single quote or you can have under double quote. When you are looking at a list declaration, you have to pay attention to the start and ending, which is happening with a starting parenthesis before your first member and closing parenthesis post your last member. And tuples will be, you know, in the inside a parenthesis. Okay, so square bracket 1 and 2. Okay, so you have to start paying attention because in Python now you'll be having, you know, these are a specific kind of more complex objects where you can actually have, you know, it's a specific syntax, but for the built-in one there is, you need to know that, you know, how list is different than a tuple and some of the others. Okay. So when you are looking at mappings, right? Uh, so these are actually unordered data types in Python, right? And one of the primary example is dictionary, right? And you know, if you look at some of the key characteristics about dictionaries, look at how a student is, you know, declared here, right? So these are starting with curly braces, right? That is one, and individual elements are separated by a comma, right? If you see name and John, they're separated by a comma. And here the key will start first. Key will typically be, you know, bunch of characters, more like in a string. Semicolon, this is again important, right? This semicolon part, and followed by value. Then actually the second entry, third entry, and all of that. And when you are only having keys, right? That's when you, it is actually having almost similar access, and we interpret as a set. The only difference between dictionary and set is there are no key value pair, it's only keys. Here you'll be actually having some choices of, you know, when to use what, right? So when we are using you know, list, uh, so basically, you know, if you have to use that, look at your usage pattern. If your usage pattern is something where you have to actually create it once and then access them in order, then, you know, linearly ordered or ordered sequences like a string list uh, would be very very useful. When the order is not important and you have to do frequent search, you know, right? So search is quite faster. You know, you might have gone through your Vivo notation, you know, so far. So typically, search is typically about the number, order of length of that particular list or string, while search in case of dictionary and sets are logarithmic to the total number of entries in a typical implementation around binary trees or some variation of it. And good implementation could even improve further on these things. Uh, in the built-in part, right, with the you know, name for a dictionary, you can actually, you know, you access keys and values through dot operator. And you know, if you use this, if you want to use value of a given, you know, key, the format is put the key under a square bracket, right? So what we'll do here is, we have been talking about now, you know, keys and values for quite some time. We looked at, you know, various uh, mutable and immutable. You might be tested on this. So all the basic built-in types around numeric, that is integer, float, boolean, complex, as well as string and tuples. So they are immutable, and these are the variables whose values cannot be changed after they are created. You might ask, what will happen if you change? If you change them, then another copy of that will be created. And how that is different for you, we'll see in a coding example. Meaning of immutable is once once they have been created, they can be easily changed, and those are list, sets, and dictionaries. Uh, so from exam perspective, you might be asked of different data types, some code manipulation, right? And also checking your knowledge on what will be output for certain syntax related things, right? Um, Before we move forward, let us actually again get back to our recordings, right? And try and look at some specific code in our Jupyter notebook. Oh, it was not changed. I'm sorry. I think I was speaking, while being in Jupyter notebook and forgot to share the slide. I let me now complete the coding part of it, and again I'll actually walk you through the slides. So anyway, let us get back to slides. So my bad, I couldn't, you know, keep. Okay. So let us look at some simple variable declaration, right? Hopefully you might be able to see this part. Okay. So say you can say x is equal to 10, right? And then you can use type of x, right? So typically if it is the last statement, you don't have to explicitly use print, right? But if you want, you can use it as well. So this is of class. Now if you have y as 10 point or 100 0.40, right? And there if you are actually trying to print, right, say y and type of y, right? So here we'll see that this value is of type float, right? Then say that is a student, right? We use this variable and you assign it false, right? Here if you try and look at the type of this, you'll be seeing boolean, right? Okay. So there is little difference between when you use the print statement versus not, because print is can look at some of the associated information and print them with little more annotation, right? So if you want to do just type of this, right? Okay. Now let us look at some name, right? So name of the students, right? So let us say you are looking at. Let's also look at complex, right? And see how it works. So say your complex variable, right, is uh, 10 plus 5j, right? And here if you look at your print statement around this particular variable, right, and then type of it, right? So it will actually print the value as it is and its class as complex. So you have seen little examples of 10, 20 and all of that. Now let us say we are having a tuple, right? And pay attention to it because we'll be testing your whether it is immutable or not and how it is different for you, right? So say your tuple is about a student name and its section, right? So say you are saying that um, you know Jairam, right, is in section A, right? So this tuple is about uh, a student section, right? Learn to have meaningful name, so not very big, not very small, right? Now if you try and print, right, um, a student section, and type of feed, right? There are some issues with my typos, so excuse me. So you can see the value of Jairam A and class tuple. Now see what is the difference between when we are calling it immutable. So say now we are assigning, says X we have already used, but say student one, right? Right, as a student section, okay, and you use print on a student one, right? So you get Jeremy. Now simply change it, right? The same variable with another name, okay? So say not Jairam, but say that Ramesh, and say that Ramesh in section B, right? So here, if you look at print statement of a student name, uh, right, you will get, sorry, this is student section, right? Ramesh and B. And what is the difference? The student one variable that you are having, right? So if you print it now, right, a student one will be pointing to a Charam A. This is very important. So what has happened? When you have initialized another value to it, it has created another memory, and this one is referring to it. Another characteristics of being it immutable is you can't modify part of this. So if you see, right, you can refer them by its indices. So your 0, right? First one is Ramesh, and then you will be having a student section and 1, right? So that is B. But if you want to change one of it, right? So if you want to change a student section and say that this is again back to Jairam, right? This will not be allowed. You will get error that tuple object doesn't support item assignment, right? You can also check with your one being uh, you know say B, right? Same error. So we saw some specific examples about it. Now let us look at uh, set first, because those are easier. So okay. So what you have to do, say so if you want to use student names, right? Uh, Student names, right? Across your class, right? The only thing you have to do is start a curly braces, and then start typing the name. Right? Say Jairam, right? Uh, Ramesh, okay? Mohan, right? You can use both single as well as double quote, right? So uh, this is your actually student names. If you want to print uh, the whole of student names, or let us say type of it, right? So now it is saying class as set. Okay. Uh, there will be some operators, right? So if you want to check that whether Ramesh, right, uh, is in student names, uh, okay, we will actually be so say for names in student names, right? Okay. um, if names equal to what? Say if you want to check for Mohan, right? You can print that uh, Mohan is in set student names, right? If you'll check with something which is not there, right? So you can test it accordingly. You can convert it into a function. We'll see some smaller, usable syntax for this. Um, what was meaning of immutable here? If you actually add additional name, right, or if you modify, some of the other names, you will actually see that uh, these are not destroyed and reassigned, right? Now let's get back to our dictionary example, right? And so here what we have to do, say that you are actually having uh, roll number, right, and a student, and if you want to name it the student roll, right? So how you'll actually go about it? Say Jairam, right? And Jairam roll number is a 10, right? So then you can have a mix of these. This will be allowed, right? So Ramesh, and say if his roll number is 12, right? Then say go about uh, Jagat, right? And say that Jagat roll number is 15. Okay. So if you want to print type of uh, this student roll number that you define, that is now a dictionary, right? And what was the differentiator? You had key values separated by semicolon, right? So if you see here, your key values, right, are separated by this dot, right? Okay, this is important. Okay. Now, say if you want to look at iterate over it, right? So one thing could be for key, and the way you write is kv, right? So for key value in a student roll number, right? You can actually print k, and then you can print uh, you know either value, or you can actually so you can pay. Let's do it in a key and value, right? Right. So if you want to access individual key value, you have to use items, right? You can also, what the way you can do is your keys could be your student roll number, and then you can say all the keys, right? And say you print keys. Okay? So you have to use actually a function calling kind of to see that. In a similar way, if you want to look at all the values, you can do through uh, dot values. Okay, and here if you print uh, values, sorry, values, we'll get all the values, right? Now, uh, for fun, if you want, you can actually, check, right, whether a given number is in, say, for example, whether if there is a name, right? So if say a student name, right, is so you can simply write. Let's do a very simple exercise of write a function, right, to find roll number, uh, return minus 100 if not found. Okay, because assume that minus 100 is not a permittable one, right? So how will go about this? Define, right? Find roll number, and here let us actually assume that our student road, right, is provided. We are anyway actually making an assumption about it, uh, and name. Okay, so for key kv in what? The student role, right, and items. Okay. If k is equal to your name, right, what you can do? Return, what you will return? Your student roll number and its value, right? uh, and you can also say print it, right? So print uh, roll number is, okay, let's say we'll actually print it outside. And you can say that default value, right, is minus 100. So in that case we can say that default value is now a student roll number, right? And from here you can simply return default value. Let's check it. So if your name is, say, Jairam, let's take individual Ramesh one, right? So if your name is Ramesh and then you want to call uh, find roll number, there is a mistake in roll number, but let's continue with this, right? So it will work on a student roll and then you can give name, right? Okay, so there is a typo here where we are using student roll. Okay, so Ramesh is with 12, right? What if you want to test with Mahesh? Jagat, right? You can get it, that is 15, and Jagadanand, right? You see minus 100. This is how you can write, simple search around it. Um, there are also other operators, easy and other, that we'll be actually seeing in our next video. But before we go to our video, since we forget to sort of, change the source, let us, quickly look through our Google Slides and see where we are. Um, Okay, so here we were simply talking about different Python data types. You can see the hierarchical one. This has been taken from your NCERT book for same reference. So we talked about there are numbers, sequences, and mappings. Under numbers, we are having integer, floating point, complex, and boolean. The sequences we are having string, list, and tuples. And mappings are firstly measure, yeah, these are dictionaries, and if dictionaries are not having key value pair, then we call it sets, right? Null is also a kind of data type, and we'll talk about it. How you actually declare, you don't need anything, right? So simply call x equal to 5, y equal to 3.414, right? True or false, right? And complex one need actually one of the expressions being j. In sequences, these are ordered collection items. That's what we talked about, and you can index them by an integer, right? So I think this is something we forgot. If need be, we can actually go back and again try and refer that. So what you can do here, so if you're having numbers is equal to 1 2 3, if you actually see numbers 1, right? And then we talked about the dictionary and sets, right? We talked about immutable, mutable data types, and what kind of questions you can expect in your exam, right? Um, then we actually again went back and we were looking at our slides, right? So fantastic. Now you know how to work with variables, comments, your then your identifiers and keywords, right? We actually just reviewed the Python data types, and in next one we will actually deep dive into operators that will allow that how you can perform operations on these variables that we just saw, right? So thanks. Hope to see you in your next video. Um, Comment if you actually see certain issues, or you want certain additional things to be included, and like and subscribe if you like these videos. Thanks.